It works.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All
So we'll
right.
start.
You want to go first then? It just has to be from 12 to 15 minutes.
Sure, I'll go first.
All right.
Okay, hello, my name is Christian, and the communication styles that I will be discussing today are convergence and divergence. So I personally believe that there's always room for improvement when it comes to bettering our communication styles, whether it's with friends, family, or classmates or coworkers. I personally have not always been the best communicator, but I've improved in many ways just because that's just what happens when you grow up. But so like, for example, I've had issues when it comes to aggressive listening or and aggressive listening, that's like you're waiting for somebody to say something that you disagree with so you can ambush them with an argument. And I've done that a lot, which is that's not okay. So it tends to escalate the argument and I mean the conversation in a negative way. So that's kind of not it's something that you don't want to do. But my family and I tend to argue a lot, but over the scales of our arguments, we have all become better communicators and matured in that way. So instead of yelling or belittling each other, we use the convergence and divergence method within our communication. So for example, this is my first scenario. So when I was 19, I'm 21 now. When I was 19, I got a piercing without telling my mom about it. She was very angry with me. So I felt as though since it was my body and I paid for it and it was my decision, I should be able to do that. But she wasn't okay with it at all. She yelled at me, she cussed me out. And afterwards, we did have a civilized conversation about it. She used the convergence method with me. So basically she put herself in my shoes, how she was my age at one point, and she did get a couple of piercings. So she kind of had to take it back and get back into like how I feel instead of being like the parent. So yeah. And then she also obviously used the divergence when it came to how our argument was and how she was definitely establishing the fact that she's the parent and I'm her child. So the second scenario that I have is kind of a work environment setting. So I used to work in Ashley Furniture during my training stage. So this was either like my first or second day. They wanted me to learn the computer system, and my manager really expected me to automatically learn it on the first day, which I just couldn't do that. And most people couldn't. It was very difficult to learn at first. But I told her that I would want her to have more patience with me when it came to learning it. And I had to do that on top of customer service. So it was a lot of multitasking and it was very frustrating. But like I said, I needed her to have more patience with me. And then she understood where I was coming from. So that's where the convergence comes in again, because she also was the customer service associate at first, and then she scaled up to be the manager. So she understood where I was coming from. So I think with her being the manager, she kind of forgot like what the process is when it becomes to starting as like a regular employee. So that's where the convergent style came in. And then the divergence is whenever she kind of established herself as being my manager and how I report to her. So that's kind of where that second scenario comes in.
And when it came to like my managers, I kind of had that opposite situation.
Really?
Because they kind of just hung around. We were working together on the whole thing. And if I didn't know how to do something, they would just train me. They were pretty patient. Like one time I dropped plates on the grill by accident. And he was just like, it's all right. They just threw out all the food. There was no arguing, anything like that. And, he's always kind of used convergence because, we'll talk about movies, stuff like that, aspirations for the industry. So convergence really is better to just use in general, especially if you're having like a work relationship type deal thing.
Right.
And I don't think any of my coworkers have ever really used divergence because I used to work at a Chipotle. I worked there for a couple months. I had to leave because of college, but we are all a pretty close knit group because we had to talk together, converge. Because the customers, they would rip you apart sometimes. Some of them, if you weren't working together. So we all had we all had each other's backs, and it just really worked because I was like good at cleaning, and no one really liked to clean. So
No one does.
yeah. No.
Yeah.
In terms of family, I tend to use convergence as well because we have a pretty large family, and like the oldest, she's like 22, 21, and the youngest, he's like 6. So you can't
Yeah.
really, like, if you start diverging with the youngest, he's just like it's hard to match his energy because he's the baby of the family. But if you can match his energy, you have to try and converge with him. But if you can just connect to him, he can hold a very mature conversation as long as you're not treating him like he's a little kid. So converging, I think, brings out the best in other people because you have to be invested into the conversation when the other person's taking you seriously and you're just having a down to earth talk.
Yeah.
Right.
I typically use convergence most when I'm with family because I'm 16. I just turned 17 and I got into college
Really?
early. Yeah, I'm 17 now. I turned 17 just this year. Uh, I usually only use convergent. I usually just use convergence because, I try to avoid arguments with anyone, keeps the peace, especially in the family. I haven't gotten a job yet because scholarships kind of took care of that. But like Isaiah, I typically use convergence in the family, try to make sure if there's anything that arises because it is a large family. So there are a lot of people. Yeah, since it really does bring out the best in people because it's like you find similarities between yourself and then others. And it allows you to kind of cooperate, get through issues quickly. Kind of uses, what is it called? The cooperative method of conflict management. It was in the previous chapters of the English. That's when you both just work together to find a mutually beneficial agreement. And it just seems like convergence seems to be the best way. So both parties are satisfied and there's no like bad vibes between each other.
I mean, I do think that divergence does have its place in like a conversation because
Definitely.
I've had some times when someone has made a joke that I haven't really found funny that was kind of offensive. And rather than converging and letting it slide, I either explain the joke out loud so it's not as funny, or I just don't laugh with them so they can understand that I'm not going with it. And I think divergence can be useful in it's kind of like a more non-verbal way, like to just show that you do not agree with their opinion and that it's not it's just not kosher. You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I feel like convergence, like all around, is the first thing that I feel like it's the first thing that everybody should do. Well, depending on what the conversation is, but for the most part, that's kind of what the first move I feel like should be. But I feel like divergence is also important just because it helps establish boundaries.
That's the youngest now.
You don't want to feel like you're being walked on, so that's always important.
Yeah. Sorry, that's the youngest one right now. All right, Ephraim, go in the other room, please. Yep, that was it. Good.
But yeah, that definitely, I mean, that scenario right there, you needed to use convergence because if he did divergence, tried to yell him out, he would have just started laughing and just started running around the room.
Hey,
yeah,
it's fun.
But definitely, convergence really is like the best talking style if for like family situations.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do get angry, I do sometimes use divergence, even when the other person isn't trying to step on my toes. So that doesn't really work out well because that just kind of leads to like an argument, and we all live in the same house, so you can't.
Right, there's only so much you can do whenever it's family involved.
Yeah, you can't walk away. You're right in the same house. They can just open the door and be like, "Remember that bad argument we had earlier?"
Like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Right. So to really kind of conclude the conversation, I think we gathered that convergence is usually the best way to go about constructing like a discussion or a conversation, and then divergence is really best to use whenever you really need to use your boundaries and stand on what you mean. So it's
Yeah.
always best to use both. They are both communication styles. So I feel like we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's pretty good, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, the youngest one coming in was really wonderful. Ephraim is just a wonder.
Yeah.
I guess I'll host a new meeting unless one of y'all want to host it.
I guess you have both emails, so it's probably best you do it.
And that was like 12 minutes, right?
I think, right?
It felt long enough, I think. Wait,
Wait.
hold on. I'm about to stop recording. Thank you for
All right.
listening. Goodbye.